Conan the Barbarian has remained such an enduring work, at least in part due to its real-world ties. The world of Hyboria is built on the echoes of real-world cultures, with most countries and peoples being an early prehistory version of real-world settings, such as the ancient Egyptians, Romans, Greek, Germanic, and so on. Conan intersects with history on many fronts, and today we are bridging the gap between Conan Exiles and real-world history, explaining the influences, mythology, and ideas behind what we experience in-game. The topic of today's episode of Conan IRL is Set, the Old Serpent. Before we jump in, if you'd like me to make a series of this, delving into the history and connections between the game and real life, do let me know in the comments. There is plenty of material to work with. So, let's begin. In Conan Exiles, Set is a fairly straightforward deity. Worshipped once by the Serpent Men of Volusia and now chiefly by the Stygians, Set is one of the most easily identifiable gods, and his ways are rather easy to understand. He is perhaps closer to a demon, at least according to his detractors. An ancient serpentine being, Set hungers for the blood of sacrifices, and his cultists are all too happy to daub their altars in the crimson of screaming prisoners. The reverence of serpents in religion and mythology is likely as old as time itself. In some cultures they are viewed positively. The ancient Greeks saw snakes as sacred beings of healing, and Greek myth says a serpent taught secret knowledge to Asclepius, the god of medicine. The rod of Asclepius, a staff with that same snake wrapped around it, is now the dominant symbol for medicine and healthcare in modern times. That being said, many cultures have also viewed serpents negatively. Christianity also uses the serpent in the Garden of Eden as an avarice of evil that causes Eve to disobey the word of God, though that being said, snakes in Christianity are not always evil. However, when we look at Set, I think his inspiration is pretty clear. Set is worshipped primarily by the Stygians, who are almost immediately obvious as analogous to ancient Egypt. If you know anything about ancient Egypt, you will know that it had an extensive pantheon of gods and deities. However, one in particular seems to have served as the clear inspiration for Set. Apep, sometimes also named Apophis, is the ancient Egyptian deity who personifies darkness and disorder. Depicted, of course, as a serpent, Apep was said to live in the underworld and was the direct opponent of light and truth. There is also a deity named Set in the ancient Egyptian pantheon. He's the god of deserts, storms, disorder, violence, and foreign people, but his role doesn't seem to fit Set in Conan Exiles. When we talk about him, we'll refer to him as Egyptian Set, so you know what I'm talking about. We'll get into him a bit more later. Apep was said to have been born after the creator and sun god Ra. Some descriptions say that Apep was actually born from Ra's own umbilical cord, which demonstrates a necessary connection between light and darkness. Some other sources would say that Apep has existed from the beginning of time in the primordial watery abyss, from which Ra, the creator sun god, first arose. Ra himself is, funnily enough, pretty close to Mitra in the world of Conan. Mitra himself represents the sun, and his archenemy is of course none other than the demon Set. These two deities, Ra and Apep, are pretty much polar opposites of each other, and it seems throughout Egyptian mythology they are pretty much always positioned as effectively arch-enemies. Back to the Egyptian mythology, Apep and Ra would regularly battle one another. It was thought that Ra brought the sun across the sky during the day, but at night would have to travel on his solar boat through the underworld to allow the sun to rise again. There, in the underworld, Ra would battle Apep to ensure the world did not fall into darkness. There do seem to be a few different interpretations of this myth. In a number of them, the Egyptian god Set would defend Ra on his journey through the underworld, fighting Apep to facilitate Ra's passage. A piece of artwork in the Cairo Museum depicts Set spearing Apep, and funnily enough that seems to be hinted at in Conan Exiles. The Staff of Epimetheus is a high-tier reward from the Mitraean religion. Epimetheus is an old sage from the book The Phoenix on the Sword, and the item description implies that this staff was used to fight off Set himself. I think it's very likely there's some overlap here between the myth of Egyptian Set fighting Apep in the underworld, and how the conflict with Conan Set is depicted in the Mitraean religion. The mythology of Apep and Ra is quite an elegant rationalisation of the battle between light and darkness, and of order and chaos. It is said that Apep could sometimes swallow Ra, but his protectors and the spirits of the dead defending him would slice open Apep's stomach and free the sun from within. Some sources also say that the Egyptians rationalised eclipses with Apep's treachery, stating that he had caught Ra by surprise and had managed to swallow his son, though Ra would usually free himself or would be freed by others. As Apep was thought to live in the underworld, he is sometimes thought of as an eater of souls. The Book of Overthrowing Apep describes the process of dishonouring, dismembering and disposing of Apep to ensure the safety of the dead souls in the underworld, and the Book of the Dead and other literary works contain spells to destroy Apep, these incantations sometimes being buried with the deceased. A ritual each year, named the Ritual of Overthrowing Apophis, would burn an effigy of Apep to protect people from the evil and darkness of the world. Many art pieces depict the battles Apep has with Ra, and this art has been found in many places of significance, including the tomb of Ramesses I. Apep in the Egyptian mythology is a deity of chaos, darkness and disorder, the arch-enemy of light and truth. Set in Conan Exiles is pretty similar. As the arch-enemy of Mitra, the clear parallels between Mitra and Ra, and Set and Apep are clear. Naturally, religion and mythology often bear striking similarities throughout time and across cultures. Since the first days of humanity, the sun and the darkness have been driving factors of superstition, at a time when the world was more wild and much was unknown. The duality of light and darkness is prime for mythology, and the tales of the battle between Apep and Ra symbolise that perfectly. The works of Conan the Barbarian delve throughout history and draw inspirations from many sources. Though Set was likely built from small tidbits from multiple places, I think it was very likely that the Old Serpent was indeed based on the ancient Egyptian god Apep. The clearly Egyptian setting of his Stygian worshippers, his endless battle with Mitra, and even his residency in the Outer Dark, a realm that could easily be compared to Egypt's underworld, makes strong connections between the two. As a child, I was always really interested in ancient Egypt, and for the historical and mythological inspirations behind what we experience in Conan Exiles, I think this is a pretty good jumping off point. The comparison of Set and Apep is quite an easy one to make, though I think the interactions with Apep and Ra, and how they mirror the interactions between Set and Mitra are probably the most interesting parts of this topic. There is so much more material in the world of Conan Exiles that links to cultures from across the world and throughout time, so if you want to see more videos like this, or you have a suggestion of something I should look into next, please do let me know in the comments. I can't claim to be a great historian, but I like history a lot, and I think this is a series that could be pretty interesting. Thank you for watching, and of course a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. If you want to support the channel yourself, check out the Patreon through the link in the description or pinned comment, or join as a member here on YouTube by clicking join just below this video. Take care, and I'll see you soon.